In 1943, when noted scientists left the outside world and came to Los Alamos to create an atom bomb, they didn't know the exact approach they would take or even what materials they would use.
The flash was later calculated to be brighter than 1,000 suns. Miles away, a young girl, blind from birth, saw the flash. Men at the site felt the heat of a desert sun. Then came the shockwave. 2 GIs at the command center stood up in their excitement at seeing the boiling cloud and were knocked to the ground. The roar followed, a cascading thunderclap that rolled and boomed out across the desert.
Since the first atomic bombs were built here at Los Alamos, the world has learned more and more about atomic power. Slowly, we on this planet have begun to understand the deadly legacy of smashing the atom. Rising background radiation, mutation, cancer, and the most haunting of all, nuclear waste. In the years since J. Robert Oppenheimer turned this one-bar crossroads in New Mexico into the most gigantic atomic weapons research complex in the world, we have accumulated thousands of tons of nuclear waste in the U.S. and spent billions of dollars making and testing bigger and better nuclear weapons. Until now, man has stockpiled enough nuclear weapons to turn this planet into a dead, lifeless sphere of radioactive rock. Yet now that the fall of the wall and the cooling of the Cold War appear to have perhaps given us a permanent reprieve from nuclear holocaust, we find ourselves faced with nuclear waste from 40 years of atomic brinksmanship. And that waste will emit deadly radioactivity for hundreds and thousands of years. 100,000 tons of radioactive plutonium waste would decay to 50,000 tons of radioactivity within the mass in 27,000 years. 50,000 tons would decay to 25,000 tons in 54,000 years, and so on. At the end of 250,000 years, 97.62 tons of radioactivity would remain within the 100,000 ton mass. The biggest battle in the nuclear arena is now being waged in Carlsbad, New Mexico, at the proposed WIPP site, WIPP, Waste Isolation Pilot Plant. This is where the U.S. government plans to bury our low-level nuclear waste underground in giant salt caverns. The waste to be stored at WIPP is the so-called low-level waste, plutonium-soiled clothing and tools, not the high-level spent fuel rods of uranium-238, emitting gamma rays so deadly it is said that a motorcyclist passing an exposed control rod at 60 miles an hour would die in minutes from the resulting radiation. Across America at nuclear reactor sites, spent fuel rods are being presently stored underwater in large cement cooling ponds, waiting for transport to the yet undesignated high-level waste disposal site. That battle is being fought in Nevada at Yucca Mountain, where Nevada's Governor Cecil Andrus was taken to court by the federal government because of Nevada's resistance to having the high-level waste site located in the state. What has come to pass because of 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and the growing evidence of genetic mutation, cancer, leukemia, resulting from exposure to radiation and radioactive fallout is that nobody wants nuclear waste in their backyard. In Santa Fe, New Mexico, residents have been fighting the transport of nuclear waste through their town to the WIPP site for 10 years. They know that once the trucks of nuclear waste start rolling, there will be one arriving at WIPP every 90 seconds for the next 30 years. That's how much radioactive waste has piled up. A quietly desperate hint of resignation can be sensed now from some people beginning to surrender to the possibility that the planet has become irreversibly enslaved to the nuclear legacy. However, in 1981, the results of the research of one of the world's most eminent nuclear physicists caught the attention of the world press. Dr. Radha Roy, former director of the University of Brussels Nuclear Physics Laboratory and the Penn State Nuclear Physics Laboratory, had made the discovery of a process whereby unstable elements of nuclear waste could be transformed and stabilized, the Roy process for the neutralization and elimination of nuclear waste. Dr. Roy was teaching nuclear physics as professor emeritus at the University of Arizona in 1981 when the Arizona Republic broke the story. Last summer, EIS interviewed Dr. Roy at his home in Phoenix. I first asked Dr. Roy to give us a brief history of his life and his work. Dr. Radha Roy.
I was born in Calcutta in India, and I started to read and write from a very early age. At the age of 2, I knew how to read and write. By the age of 12, I finished practically world literature, Russian, German, French, Italian, of course in translated languages. And then from the age of 14, I started to work on nuclear theory. This continued until I was in my mid-teen. And later on the basis of my research, I was invited to go to London to do research mostly and some teaching. And I got my doctorate degree in the University of London in 1946. I stayed in London about 7 years, doing research, publishing papers, and advising students. Then, University of Brussels, Belgium, they wanted to build up their nuclear physics laboratory. So I accepted this position in Brussels. I built up their nuclear physics laboratory. Quite a few students joined me to do their doctorate degree. I was in the University of Brussels for 8 years, building their program, and I was also frequently invited to give lectures in various European universities, including Sorbonne, University of Paris. I remember very well Professor Frédéric Joliot and Madame Irène Joliot-Curie. Madame Irène Joliot-Curie is the daughter of Pierre and Madame Curie. Used to invite me, and I used to be their house guest. I'm very honored that they showed me this courtesy, and we became great friends. I knew all the European scientists, for example, Schrödinger, Heisenberg, and many Italian scientists, including some Danish scientists, and most of them have passed away. But after 8 years in Brussels University, Pennsylvania State University wanted to build their nuclear physics program. So when they offered me a position there as a director, so I joined Penn State. I had to design new building, raise funds from the Atomic Energy Commission. And in one occasion, President Eisenhower visited the nuclear physics lab. I was at Penn State for 6 years. There have been many articles published about our research program. And then Arizona State University Physics Department asked me if I could come and build up their doctoral program. And then I have also written several books. These books have been well received all throughout the world and have been well reviewed in various journals. And so this is, and then of course I'm also contributing author of invited articles in encyclopedia. So the activities consisted of then giving lectures, doing research, writing books, and later on I felt that nuclear power was really detriment to the interest of human being. So I started to speak against nuclear power. So this is more or less briefly the way I'm working now.
The life history of the nuclear physicist who says nuclear waste can be neutralized and eliminated is impressive. A child protege reading and writing at age 2, completing the classic works of world literature at age 12, and beginning his study of nuclear physics at age 14. Invited to the University of London to continue his studies, a doctorate degree in 1946 from the university, where he stayed for 7 years teaching and advising doctoral students, builder and director of the Brussels Nuclear Physics Lab for 8 years, lecturing throughout Europe at universities including the Sorbonne in Paris, an associate of the daughter of Madame Curie, an associate of the elite nuclear physicists in Europe, inventor and theoretical innovator, professor of physics emeritus at the University of Arizona, where he wrote a wide range of theoretical works with translations published in many countries, and then, as he said, he began speaking out against nuclear power.
I published scores of original research paper. Quite a few of them have been the avant-garde, as they call it. They were entirely new, especially in quantum electrodynamics, a special field of nuclear physics. And also, I was one of the first person to verify certain theories of nuclear physics, which was really complex. And it was, later on, my work was also verified by subsequent researchers, especially from Sweden. So I did some significant original research. I feel good about it.
A nuclear physicist with not just impressive but impeccable credentials, who maintains there's a solution for potentially the greatest environmental crisis facing the planet, the long-term underground storage of nuclear waste. I asked Dr. Roy to explain why, in his opinion, this underground storage is so dangerous.
I sincerely believe the people who recommend to get rid of the nuclear waste problem by storing it underground, they are sincere. But there are many serious scientists who disagree with this kind of easy solutions. And the solution is not easy either. You see, those containers which contain very potent nuclear waste radioactivity, they're dissolved in solution. To extract the plutonium, they take the plutonium out. In the solution is left radioactive isotopes. These are toxic. It is going to affect the containers. So eventually it is going to leak out. In addition, even when you store it, the nuclear disintegration does not stop. That means radioactive atoms continue to break down. With each breaking down of nuclear radiations, by giving beta or gamma radiation, there is generation of heat. How are you going to remove this heat for 250,000 years? Who is going to pay for it?
So we come down to the big question. What then does Dr. Roy say can be done to neutralize and eliminate nuclear waste?
In 1979, I thought of a process to neutralize nuclear waste. What does that mean? You see, nuclear, I sincerely believe, and many scientists believe, that you cannot simply store nuclear waste. The only way you can change, you can eliminate radioactivity through nuclear reaction process. What does that mean? What is a nuclear reaction? Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the nucleus is made up of neutrons and protons. Certain combinations of these neutrons and protons make a nucleus unstable. So the fission products which are produced, they're unstable. Okay, now it is possible to change this constitution of those fission fragments, the byproducts which are formed through nuclear reaction. So, for example, let us take the case of, say, three of them. Cesium-137 is a type of element which is produced as a byproduct of fission. Now, this is very radioactive. It emits beta radiation. Its half-life is about 31, 32 years. That means, if you start with a certain quantity, it will take that many years before it can come to have the quantity. Now, if we can provoke nuclear reaction, let us say by bringing, say, gamma radiation, which has no charge, no mass, then it can throw away, say, one neutron from the cesium, producing cesium-136 from cesium-137. This has only a couple of weeks half-life. Then let it decay, die. It will go into a stable form. Strontium is the same way as strontium-89, about 28 years or so half-life. Strontium-90, I'm sorry. We can convert it through nuclear Roy process, as it is known, through strontium-89. In a couple of weeks, it will decay into a stable form. Plutonium is more difficult. Plutonium-239 has a half-life of 24,300 years. But we can use the same reaction process by bombarding this plutonium with gamma radiation throughout the neutrons. So plutonium, this particular brand of plutonium, which is very potent for nuclear fission, what we call plutonium-239, can be converted into plutonium-238. From 24,300 years, the half-life comes down to of 238 to 80 years. We can treat this plutonium-238 after chemical separation. The process of separation is well known. So we can treat plutonium-238 through the same nuclear reaction, producing plutonium-237, which has a half-life of 40 days. Then it will go, totally plutonium can be eliminated. It will go into another radioactive elements in the uranium class. Now, uranium, of course, exists in nature. If you do not want this uranium, what you can do, well, go on treating it the same way and through nuclear reaction until it reaches the stable form of lead. Lead is the heaviest element known in nature, and there is stable form of lead. You can do this. I believe this is entirely feasible, and the machinery needed exists. Chemical separation for the process needed exists. I don't see what they lose by trying this process.
The Roy process, as its inventor, will change unstable beta radiation-emitting cesium-137 with a half-life of 30 years to cesium-136 with a half-life of only a few weeks, strontium-90 with a 28-year half-life to strontium-89 with a 50-day half-life, and plutonium-239 with a half-life of 24,000 years to plutonium-238 with a half-life of 89 years. And then treated again with the Roy process, it becomes plutonium-237 with a half-life of 45 days. And what's more, this theoretical innovator in nuclear physics tells us the hardware exists and the chemical extraction processes are well known. And he doesn't see what they will lose by trying his process. Next week on EIS, we will explore what can be gained and what could be lost by ridding the planet of nuclear waste. The politics and money of cleaning up the planet on part 2 of No Time to Waste, as EIS continues its interview with Dr. Radha Roy. That's 7 Eastern, Westar 5, Transponder 6. Remember, there is no time to waste.
Cancellations of nuclear tech, installations, nuclear feeders and reactors, check-a-lack in the leaders. Workers deserve to spend the work.